one of the biggest challenges in at least American society today is, their view on what is poverty.
Poverty is
no place to live, nothing to eat.
Probably when you don't have enough money, to buy necessities.
Not having a job, having to stay at a mission.
When you living on the street, you don't have any money, you don't have anywhere to go.
Especially no clothes to put on, shoes on your feet.
not being able to take care of those of yourself or your family with the means that are available to you.
And how many people do you think are in that situation in Chicago?
I'm sure there's a lot.
I've seen a lot of them.
Especially in the city, where you can see them on the street.
Thousands.
Several thousand.
At least over 500,000.
Millions.
About 20%.
Probably in the range of about 30 to 35%.
Well, I take 3 out of 5.
More than is comfortable.
Hello and welcome to Just for Sure, the show that confronts a new provocative question every episode. The question presented to us today: what is poverty and what are its causes? To answer this question, we interviewed professionals who work with poverty, as well as the general public, both privileged and impoverished alike. As you have seen, the public opinion on the definition of poverty, as well as the number of people in that condition, is inconsistent. As published by the United States Census Bureau in the 2004 American Community Survey, the rate of individuals below the poverty level in the Chicago metropolitan area was 21.1%, or 128,876 people. This represents an approximate increase of 1.5% since the year 2000, or 0.4% per year. With that knowledge, we can estimate that the Chicago metropolitan area poverty rate in 2005 was 21.5%. To find these statistics, you can go to factfinder.census.gov. Why do you think there are so many?
Well, maybe one of the reasons is unemployment, then lack of education maybe.
Because people are unwilling to work and educate themselves so they can get a good enough job to support themselves.
Lack of family support, lack of the ability to get a job once you have reached that level.
Lord knows, it could be many different reasons. I mean, you could be born into it, could have misfortune, you could, because of gentrification, Lord knows. I mean,
some people get divorced. Depression, I think, has a big cause.
With inflation and cost of living and increases with those costs, I don't think minimum wage has adjusted accordingly to compensate for that.
I think part of it is just the economic system we live in. I'm not sure I can give you a better answer than that.
What do you think was the cause? What basically caused you to be in the situation of poverty?
Drugs.
I got hit by a car.
And got hit in the head with a pipe 17 times, got my throat cut and stabbed 2 inches away from my heart in the same day.
I went into a coma, came up out the coma, I had nothing.
Stayed in the hospital for 18 months. Afterwards, I lost everything: wife, kids, place to stay. That's why I'm out here.
I'm unemployed, down on my luck, no stable income because I am a victim of downsizing and outsourcing.
So do you have any advice that you would give to anybody who is unemployed or impoverished?
you can do it.
Find work.
Get a job so you can support yourself and stop depending on other people.
It's nothing but just sweeping the street for minimum wage. It's work. It's better than standing out here on the corner asking people for their hard-earned money. And some people don't mind, but
I think if you're willing to put the time and energy into searching, I think they certainly are available.
You have just heard the opinions of several individuals regarding why poverty exists and what those who are impoverished should do to help themselves. You also heard the stories of few impoverished individuals explaining the causes of their poverty. A common ideal of the public is that poverty is caused by unemployment and a lack of education. The solutions they offered, logically, were for the impoverished to get an education and subsequently get employed. This ideal solution, however, is very distant from a realistic one. First, we will explore the possibility of an education. Stephen McCullough, CEO of Bethel New Life Incorporated, an organization that provides shelter and job training to the disadvantaged, explains what is in reality a cycle of poverty.
What really hurts are the children of the families that are working poor, because if you're working poor, you're not going to go to, you're going to, in all likelihood, especially in Chicago, you're going to be going to an underperforming school because you're going to be living in an area that's underserved and poor, and the quality of life is poor.
This man, however, does see education as the way out and is acting accordingly. Although not ideal, free courses offer one of the closest things to a solution. More information can be found about such courses at malcolmx.ccc.edu/adult_education. But what if those impoverished already have an education? We will now explore the barriers that they are presented with. There is one place that is repeatedly cited as the employer of the masses. The McDonald's Corporation boasts being named one of the 100 best companies for working moms, and this restaurant manager admits that a high degree of education is not a prerequisite for employment. Yet there is one thing that is required. Applicants must have a home address and telephone number. As the manager logically points out, these are necessities for contacting a job hopeful during the interview process. Some individuals, however, cannot provide this necessary information.
Well, I don't have a phone, so I mean, it's hard to fill out an application. Who are they going to call?
I ain't even applied to try to, because I ain't got no steady address, because I won't stay in one shelter too long,
And Mr. McCullough disagrees with the notion that employment is the instant key to success.
A lot of the issue, not every job is a good job, especially those that underpay, don't have benefits, and how can, you can't support a family if you're making minimum wage.
I sell newspapers in the morning on the interstate ramp. I usually make between $12 and $20 for like 4 or 5 hours standing in the cold wind, and I only get a dime a paper.
Earlier, Mr. McCullough mentioned the working poor. Two documents, document number 9710, published by the United States Department of Labor, and the 2005 report on Illinois poverty, published by the Illinois Poverty Summit, detailed that situation. Of the 141 job descriptions listed in document number 9710, 41 of them have an average hourly wage below the minimum housing wage, the hourly salary that a worker must earn to afford a housing unit at the Illinois fair market rent, as established by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition of 2005. In other words, nearly 40% of all jobs offered in Chicago do not provide a salary necessary to afford housing. Alex Kotlowitz, acclaimed journalist and best-selling author of the books There Are No Children Here and Never a City So Real, shares his thoughts on the importance of employment opportunities.
These are communities in which work has virtually disappeared, and I would argue that work is the very thread that holds the social fabric together, and without work, that fabric begins to unravel, and that's certainly what I saw in that community.
He then applies this insight to offer advice to the general community.
I think one is that, ironically in this country, as diverse as we are, we're incredibly disconnected from each other, and I think we've got to find ways to sort of venture into communities that are unfamiliar from our own, to spend time with people whom we otherwise wouldn't have reason to meet. I think we tend to lead very isolated lives in this country. Having said that, I also think we've got to find ways to rebuild these communities. Rebuild the schools, rebuild the infrastructure, reintroduce work, meaningful work back into these communities. Find a way to rebuild and fortify community, because I think in doing that, we'll also find ways to rebuild and fortify family and rebuild and fortify the human spirit, and that's ultimately, I think, what it's going to take.
To conclude, I would like to quote a few lines which are not altogether inappropriate, said by a far greater reporter than this one. There is controversy and a vast area of ignorance, and there is, as we hope you have seen, a determination to acquire knowledge, which is the only ground upon which opinion and action can be based. Edward R. Murrow said that. The topic of poverty is as vast as the ignorance surrounding it, and we hope to revisit this in a later episode. Unless you know for sure, then you don't know at all.